I'm so excited to share with you. And it's something that I've done for, I can't even think of how many years. And I just kind of, I don't know, I never really shared it. I never really thought about it, honestly. I thought about sharing it. It just was something I kind of instinctively do it started off years ago. I wanted to reboot and just like get myself ready for the new year mentally. It was whatever year it was a really stressful year. And I felt like I needed a reboot, right? I felt like I needed to hit the reset button on my life, year, business, all the whole thing. And so I did this week of reflection and I tried to do it. And I give myself a full week. Sometimes I stretch it out even longer. I start a little bit earlier so I can take my time and just really take time to think about the things that really happened this last year, right? So I start off with reflecting, right? And I'm going to share on Facebook. I'll share a couple images for you just as guidelines for it. But I start off with, I'm going to show you. Nope. Too many papers. I start off with reflection and it kind of looks like this, right? So it's really basic, very simple. You can do it on a notebook. You don't even need this like work page. I figure out what went well, right? I ask myself what went well, what could have gone better, right? What was my biggest win? And what behavior do I think held me back the most? Which is a very like tough question, right? Because you got to be real with yourself. I mean, there's no sense in lying to yourself, for goodness sakes, because you know the truth, right? And so sometimes when I reflect on this, it's been the end of the year before, and I'm like, did I leave it all on the field? No, I didn't. I didn't. There were times I didn't go as hard as I could have. There were times I didn't stretch myself as much as I wanted to. And that's a reality check, right? And I remember one year I definitely felt that way. I felt like I just didn't give it my all. At the end of the year, I was kind of ashamed of that, like for myself. Like, this is not the goals Pam gives me. This is not Tupperware goals. This is me, right? This is where I would like to be by the end of the year. And so that next year I was like, okay, no, I do not want to feel this way again, And so I'm like, what can I change? What can I do different? What can I, and it starts with the word, right? We talked about the word. Bonnie's going to share a little bit about her experience with the word, picking a word, right? And then it also, like, one of the things I like about doing it right now, as opposed to later, is I feel like I'm hitting the ground running in January. I have a major trigger around being behind, and I don't know where it stems from. I don't know if my parents left me behind somewhere, and I have no idea. I don't remember a traumatic event, but it's a very traumatic trigger for me, and I get really worked up and I feel overwhelmed when I feel behind, right? And so I like to kind of do this before the new year, and I definitely try to have this done before we do our first rally of the year, which is coming up on the 4th. And that is our pillowcase rally, where we do our visioning, right? And that's the reason why the first couple of times I did that, I would go there and I just sit there, look at my blank pillowcase. I'm like, I don't know what I want, And then I started doing this. And so I felt more prepared. I walked in, I'm like, okay, I know I want this, this, and this. And then as I was kind of going through that exercise, I was able to kind of get some more vision, like just kind of flesh it out a little bit, right? So I start off with that. I start off with reflecting on the past year. And sometimes that immediately takes me, my brain just starts going and it takes me right into, okay, I don't want to do that. I don't want to do this. I don't want to, and so it turns into, but I do want to do this and this and this, right? And so another thing that I use all the time, and I actually do this, I try to do it several times a year, and I know I've trained on this, is the wheel of life, right? So I do the wheel of life, where you're ranking on a scale of 1 to 10 your life in these different areas of your life. And let me tell you, there have been times this has been a flat freaking tire. Let me tell you, it's a flat wheel, okay? Because I'm just like, okay, my business is great, but I haven't spent any time with my husband, like, so it's just like, it just helps kind of bring you back to reality and make sure that you're staying in balance. Because as I've said before, balance isn't even, right? It teeters, right? And it's your job to catch it as it's starting to teeter too far and get it back to where it needs to be. So when you're feeling out of balance, that's okay. You're not really like, it's okay. Like, you can recover from that, right? So on this, it has the different categories of lifestyle, finances, health and fitness, self-development, career, friendships, family, hobbies, spirituality, personal growth. Don't worry. Like I said, I'm posting this image for you guys, so don't stress about this. Love and relationship and planning, right? And then also I'm going to post, this is a good one too, because as you're kind of going through your career one, this is a life wheel for direct sales business, time management, personal sales, show average, follow-up, recruiting, continuous learning, customer service, office organization, right? So those are things in our business that we need to keep that wheel as round as we can as well, because sometimes we're like cranking it out in personal sales and we got 0 recruits, right? And sometimes we got crazy amounts of recruits and our personal sales massively lacking, right? And we know that we have to have both those things going in order to be making forward progress. So I'm going to share that with you as well. But I think one of the most important things to do is in this process is to really look at it for your business, take time and do a very business specific one. That one's separate from your life one, right? And then take time to figure out what your perfect life looks like, okay? And when I say perfect life, I'm not talking about a Facebook perfect, okay? I'm talking about what is your perfect, right? What does that look like? You know, are you more calm so that you can be more even keel when things get all out of whack with your kids, right? Do you have, do you take time for yourself? Do you exercise? Do you practice mindfulness in some way, shape, or form? Do you take time for morning reflection, right? For years, everybody's like, oh, the most successful people have this like killer morning routine. And let me tell you, that has been one of my goals every year for a very long time. And I finally had to release that because guess what? That is not me. Okay, that is not me. I do have a morning routine, but it does not involve meditating. It does not involve reading my Bible. It doesn't involve those things. Okay, I do those later in the day, and that's okay. So don't let anybody make you feel guilty if I don't have this like super elaborate morning routine or evening routine. You figure out what works for you. But one of the things that I think is most important is taking this time to plan, right? We've all heard to sharpen your saw, right? And it's Abraham Lincoln has the quote, give me 6 hours to chop down a tree and I will spend the first 5 sharpening my axe, right? This is sharpening your axe for 2024 by taking this time to get a very clear vision of what it is that you want. Because we want you to have success in Tupperware, hands down, okay? We absolutely, because we love celebrating everybody's success in Tupperware. But we also want you to have success in life, right? So one of the things that I do, like I do these wheels to kind of get my mind going, but then I figure out, let me show you. So write this down, calendarlabs.com, okay? And if you forget that, just Google free downloadable calendars. And that's where I get all my calendars that I use for vendor events, parties, because I have people fill out their names and stuff on my calendars when I'm doing live things. But I print up this generic like daily schedule, right? And so it's all the way, this one, I love this one because it goes all the way to 10:30 p.m. and it starts super early, right? Am I working at 5:30 in the morning? I am absolutely not. Am I working at 10:30 at night? Not typically. But I like that it has that full thing. So when I start looking at like, what is my ideal, right? I always start with my schedule. What is my ideal schedule? What does that look like? And I will go through and I will highlight this is the window of time I want to work Tupperware. This is the window of time I want to exercise. This is when, and it varies from day to day, but it's my perfect schedule for the week, right? And when I started this, and I know so a couple of you have heard this before, when I started this so many years ago, I remember specifically where I was because we were at our old house in my office. It was in the corner and there was like a wall right here. And I filled this out and I looked at it and I was like, this is like my reality is literally the furthest thing from this ideal calendar that I came up with. And I couldn't even figure out how in the world I was ever going to get my schedule to look like that. But I was like, okay, but that's what I would like in a perfect world. This is my schedule. So I put it on the wall and I just left it there. And I didn't like, it's not like I sat there staring at it and like, I didn't pay much attention to it. So a fast forward a year, right? I had a baby. I had James, right? And And my mom had moved up by me. She moved up. I'm in the Akron area. She moved to Akron from Southeast Ohio. And she's like, I'd love to help out a couple days a week. I can watch the baby so you can work and like be concentrated. I'm like, God, that would be amazing. So I'm like, yeah, it'd be great if you could work, if you could come over on Tuesdays and Thursday mornings. She's like, absolutely, I can do that. I'd love that, blah, blah, blah. And then all these things kind of kept happening. And next thing I know, I look up one day, it was the end of the year, I was doing my reflection, and I realized I literally had that ideal schedule. It didn't happen within a year. I think it was maybe a year and a half or whatever. But on that ideal schedule, I did coaching calls on Tuesdays and Thursdays, right? And that's the time when mom would watch James. And then I had like time in the afternoon when he was napping, and that was and that just worked out that I was like, I'll pack hose packets on this day, and I'll go to the post office on this day, and I'll do this. And I had that schedule, and I was just like, oh my God, how in the world did that happen? Like, it was so bizarre. So don't be afraid to really put down what you want, even if you're like, I don't see how in the world that could ever become a reality. Sorry, my camera doesn't, sometimes it gets stuck on autofocus. And I talk with my hands, that doesn't help. So, and I mean, just do it. And that's what this is about. It's about creating your ideal life, right? Not mine, not Pam's, not Jenny's. I just saw her camera. So sorry, Jenny, I didn't mean to pick on you. But it's your ideal life. So you start with, what's your ideal daily schedule? What's your ideal weekly schedule? What's your ideal monthly schedule? When are your ideal party days? When are your, in a perfect world, how many vendor events are you doing every month, every quarter, every year, right? And take it out that far. Then I go through, after I always start with the schedule, because that is the master of all of your balance. That is like the backbone of your business, is managing your schedule, right? And so I start there, right? And then I go to, what does my perfect month in personal sales look like? How many recruits do I have in a perfect month? In a perfect quarter, what are my sales? In a perfect quarter, what are my recruits? In a perfect quarter or even month, how many parties am I doing? I focus on the things. Also, I make sure to put things on there that are under my control. How many hours am I spending on follow-up? How many, and I just really go in deep. I really go deep. And then I look at, what's my team? Like, in a perfect world, what's my team? How many managers am I promoting? How many team recruits are we having? Because I've already said how many of this stuff is mine. What are our sales for our team? What's a perfect month for me? And then I go to quarter, and then I go to yearly, right? And I take it out. Then I do org. How many directors do I have in my organization? And sometimes at the beginning of these years, I had one or two. And then sometimes I had more, right? And so, but in my perfect world, I had 5. It was always 5. I had 5 frontline directors in my perfect world. And so even when I only had 1, even when I had 8, I don't know if I ever had anything at 7, but I only had 8, but it could happen if I put it down. All right. So I mean, like, you really flesh it out and go as detailed as you can, because then that helps with the vision, right? When you can go really detailed on these things in your life, that helps with the vision. So that's what I do when it comes to the business. But then also when it comes to like all these other different categories, I really do the same thing. What does my perfect exercise regimen look like? What does my perfect diet look like? How much meat am I eating? How much vegetables? Like, is it more, what's that ratio? Am I eating more veggies than I am meat? Am I drinking smoothies? Am I doing protein drinks in the morning? Like, I really kind of like think this stuff through, and just think what my ideal is, even if I'm so far removed from it. What's my ideal house look like? How am I organized? How is the family running? When are the days I go to the grocery store? When are the days I meal plan? Do I meal plan? Because sometimes I do and sometimes I don't. Okay. And so, but the big thing is figure out your ideal and then give yourself some grace, right? Give yourself some grace around all this, because at the end of the year, you're not going to hit your ideal in all the categories. You're just not. And along the way, your ideal may change. You may have a major life change going on this year that you aren't even aware of. Some people are going to have babies. Some people are going to move. Some people's spouses are going to get another job in another state. I mean, you just never know what's going to happen, the good, the bad, right? But it's just a change of life. And so that's, I think, one of the biggest things at the end of the year is, if the year did not go how you planned, give yourself grace and move forward. Like, it's okay. We all have those years that we set out and we're like, I'm setting the world on fire. And then the end of the year, you're like, oh, good God, make the year stop. I can't do this year anymore. Right. And it's okay. Like, we're all in this together and we're all doing the same sort of things. So another little thing I wanted to share with you is on and I'll do this real quick, but I thought this was really interesting. I was taking this, so I also, at the end of the year, I really like, if there's a training out there that I had wanted to take and I kept putting off and putting off, and a lot of times those training are mindset trainings and things like that, because they're not urgent, right? They're not, I mean, like training on dating parties, that's more urgent if I need date parties, right? Training on recruiting, that's more urgent if I need to recruit. But mindset stuff isn't necessarily quite as urgent. And so I was listening to this training, and it was actually on planning out your year, right? Because even though I do this every year, I'm always looking for other ideas on different things that I could possibly do. And it talked about having a business versus side hustle mentality. And I thought this was really interesting. And I found, like, I think to myself, I'm like, you know what? Sometimes I have one and sometimes I have another. And I thought it was interesting. So it said side hustlers work in big bursts, and then there's nothing for periods of time. I'm totally guilty of that at times, right? Not all the time, but definitely in the past, I've been very guilty of that. Side hustlers work on what feels good, right? I'm totally guilty of that, right? Because I'm just like, well, the connection with the people is good and that's fun. Follow-up's not fun, so I'm not going to do that as much, right? That's a recipe for not getting very far, right? All right. Side hustlers change direction consistently, right? I do that sometimes. I'm like, this isn't working, and I don't give it enough time to develop or for me to develop the skills. And side hustlers choose busy work over productive tasks. Okay, I'm definitely guilty of that. How many times? I remember one time somebody said to me, they're like, I feel like you're always cleaning your office. I was like, oh, I just got outed. All right. And then it says business owners take consistent action. There have definitely been periods where I'm taking consistent action, for a consistent amount of time. And then they grow something sustainable for the long term, right? And here at Champion, I think we definitely think long term. We think as far as the year, and when we're designing Champion's calendar and things like that, we definitely think long term. Plan their action and their plans. Wait, plan and action their plans until complete. That's not the way I talk. Okay, this is somebody else's document. But they plan their work, right? And then they work on that task until it's complete. They don't multitask and do this and this and this. They try to like finish something and then move on, at least get it to a stopping point and then move on to the next. And choose productive tasks over busy work. And the biggest thing when it comes to busy work, just asking yourself, is this task moving me in the direction of where I want to go? And when you have a clear vision, you know what that is, right? And yes, sometimes cleaning your office is sharpening your saw. Thank you very much. If you have a hot mess around you and you can't concentrate, you do need to like set a timer for like an hour and like knock some of that stuff out of the way, right? But spending a day isn't necessarily so. And so I wanted to just kind of highlight that for some people. And it's okay if you're a side hustler, that's totally okay. But a way to kind of start bridging that gap is maybe to bring in some more consistency. Working in bursts is okay if that's all you can do, because in the beginning, that was all I could do. My kids were so small, I had to work in bursts or I would get nothing done, right? But I worked in consistent bursts, I'll give you that. I made sure, and I worked on trying to make those bursts as consistent as I could by making sure, like at the end of the week, I'm like, how many at the time, all I did was power hours. My whole business was power hours, right? And I'm like, at the end of the week, I'm like, how many power hours did I do? The power hours were my burst, right? And so I just thought it was kind of interesting, and I wanted to share that with you guys. So I hope this helps. You kind of think about, and like I said, I'm going to post these images for you to be able to look at, and you don't have to print them up. You can just, write it out right on a notebook, and that's good enough. It doesn't need to be anything elaborate. I took a very elaborate course on planning out your life, and it's a book. Like it's literally like it's a book. And it was a bit overwhelming. The first time I attempted it, I got to the second category and I pooped out. I did it last year. It's 12 categories and I got to 11. So yay me, I made some progress. All right, but it doesn't have to be quite that complicated. All right, so I hope this helps everybody, and I hope that you can just take that time, and again, it doesn't have to be as elaborate as this. Maybe even just start with, what does my ideal day look like? You know, what does my ideal week look like? What is that? You know, I'm you know, and just write that down and journal on it and how it makes you feel when you hit that, you know, and that's a great place to go.